Hey, what's up everybody? It's Andre with AndreReese.Biz. All right guys, I'm your favorite cyclecaster out here in these RVA streets. And so it's been a hot minute since you guys have seen me, probably about a week and a half or so. But I got a few topics I want to talk to you guys about today. The big one, I'm going to talk about Michael B. Jordan. He just won his Oscar. Got some thoughts on that. We'll also talk about tax season so far. Can't let this occasion rise and sunset unless we talk about the government shutdown. And also, let's talk about Nick Shirley. Looks like he's up to his old tricks again. So let's go ahead and just get right into it right now like we normally do. So, like I said, it's been about a week and a half since I've seen you guys, probably, that I'm thinking about it. And I'm out here in these RVA streets, out here doing the cyclecast, and glad to be out here. And like I said before, we kind of had our fake summer. We had gotten up to like 89 degrees, and then the next day, temperature slammed down to 34. And wind chill was down to 24, and we had snow, significant snow that came down for about 5 or 6 hours, so in the span of less than 24 hours, I think our temperature swung by almost 55 degrees. It was crazy, but I did a video about I'm gonna bug out and leave Richmond and come back to California. So if you guys want to check that out, feel free to do so, and I'll give you guys a blow-by-blow of what was happening as the weather system was moving in. So it was kind of crazy for sure, But let me get by these guys over here. So yeah, that was fantastic and exciting to go through that weather system. And then the next day, it was clear and sunny. Within a few days, we warmed back up to 70s or so. So now I think today, when I just looked, we're 72-ish out here, and I think it's gonna be a little bit cooler tomorrow. But like I said, I'm enjoying being out here in Richmond, Virginia for sure. So yeah, it's all good. So yeah, I've been having a great time out here, and hopefully this week I get my bike back from the bike shop. I just rode by it right now. They're closed on Sundays and Mondays, and my bike has moved in there a couple times. So maybe we're getting queued up for him to start working on it. But he said roughly about 10 business days. I'll give him until about Wednesday and then reach out. But in the meantime, I'm using my backup bike. And I've also gone and solved the problem where my where my camera kept falling off my bike. So if it wasn't for it being tethered, I would have lost it too many times. That was especially apparent on the last ride. So, all good. I've got a very strong solution here, and I'm not gonna have the problem anymore with my phone. So, yeah, guys. Yeah, so let me just go ahead and jump right in to start talking about tax season. So I think I've got a countdown in the kitchen in the dining area. I think we're down I think yesterday it was 24 days, so we're down to 23 days today before April 15th hits. And then this year, there's no special provisions. There's no, it doesn't fall on a Saturday where we get a couple extra days until Monday. It doesn't fall on a Sunday where we get it to a Monday. At this point, if you guys have been used to in the past getting extensions because of some calamity happening with the government or with the economy or with the world, that is not going to happen this year. This year, April 15th, I think it falls on a Wednesday. So it's like smack dab in the middle of the week, and time is ticking down. And so I say this, I'll say this. Every tax season that I have is different. There are no two that are the same. All I can do is prepare to help my clients and assist them, but I never know what's gonna happen until things are gonna happen. And so like last year was a really unusually different tax season. I had a lot of folks, Trump came into office, there was a lot of folks that were kind of unsure what to do. And I had a lot of folks I ended up filing extensions for, and a lot of folks that we started working on their stuff, and they kind of disappeared, and then other ones popped back up towards the end of the year. I still got a few people I'd probably say maybe 20 folks that are almost completed and they're outstanding, you know, for 2024. You know, and I have other folks that, you know, haven't even started, but I've been in regular communication with them, you know, and they're like, stuff is coming, stuff is coming, stuff is coming. So, you know, it was kind of a year in a way where people were felt like they were kind of partially subdued in a way, and kind of melancholy, kind of. But this year, 2026, it's a whole different story. Man, folks this year are out the gate. And I've gotten slammed really heavy with volume. And I've got clients that normally don't even think about reaching out to me until the end of September. They're like, this year, they're like, hey, we want to try to get this done and get it taken advantage of and get this out the way. And I tell you, I never know how many clients I have. That's why when somebody comes to me, they're like, hey, Dre, can you help me? I'm like near capacity, but I always have space. And so I'm near capacity, but I always have space to help folks for sure. So, you know, it's just kind of crazy. And so people may disappear for a year or two or three, and I never know what happened to them. I'll file an extension, usually for at least 1 year. And if I'm aware they have some issues that they're going through, I might file for a second year. But at some point, I kind of stop. And this year has been the year of the return. I have so many clients that have come back that have not filed taxes in 2 or 3 years, and they want to get it all taken care of right now. And I realize, you know, life, stuff like that happens, and I'm non-judgmental in any kind of way, you know, but I'm here to help those guys. But I've had a number of folks, I probably say I have at least 10 people this year, probably close to that, that have a step to me, and they're like, hey, I need to get my taxes all done for 2 years or 3 years before in the past. And so the thing is, I don't file 2025 unless the other years are done. So I require that we finish what's open and we work our way forward. And I've had a number of people that have worked their way through the process and we've gotten done. They're current again. Majority of them have gotten refunds. Some of them really, really large refunds, all good, you know. Other ones have owed a little bit. Other ones have, you know, owed some 1 year, got money back the next year, and things kind of washed out. I don't really ever try to, I don't get in my client's business and say, hey, why didn't you file all those years? Whether they volunteer is good enough for me. I'm cool. I'm just happy that they're back and that I can help them. And we just pick up right where we left off at. So that's been wonderful this year. So like I said, that's been a couple of the things that have been a little bit different this year. And I'll tell you, a number of folks, you know, folks hate Trump. So it is what it is. You know, we got to acknowledge that. And a lot of people had talked mess about the big, beautiful bill. But I tell you, I have seen it make a difference in a lot of my clients' tax returns. You know, so I have seniors that are in lower income that don't get a lot of taxes taken out, that get pensions and Social Security, because there was a little bit of a bump there, and I think $6,000 is the max that if you're a senior and you're under $75,000, I think it is, don't quote me, this is not tax advice, but if you're under $75,000, I think you could not have to pay any tax on that money, so it kind of lowers your taxable income. So that's kind of cool. I've got a number of people that normally end up having to pay, and then this year they were able to get money back, you know, because of that provision. I've got a number of clients that had kids in 2026 or 2025, and they wanted to go ahead and get the Trump account set up, you know, where the newborns get $10,000 that's invested, I think, in the S&P 500, and when they get to be of age, 18, they can use the money for college, they can use it to start a business, they can use it also to turn around and, start. So it's to start a business. It's to for school. You can also buy a house with the money also as well. So those are, go to trade school, etc. So it's a nice little provision that's been set up. There's also another Trump version where I think Michael Dell has funded it, the foundation. I think it's $250 per year for eligible age kids, so. And I think the other really big thing is that, especially for folks that live in California, that have a lot of withholding tax from California, and then also at the same time they pay a lot of property taxes. The SALT limit has gotten increased from 10,000 to 40,000. So I've got a number of clients that were able to definitely benefit, from that. And it's been really, really cool to see that provision, come true. So yeah, definitely folks, and some folks, they have not, they did not completely understand, and they may have ended up still owing money this year, but I had to take the time to kind of go through and break everything down to them and say, hey, based upon, where you were last year and what we may have owed, and based upon your income increasing this year, and then all of a sudden now, you still owe, but you owe a lot less than you did last year because of some of these provisions that have taken place in the tax code. So a lot of folks that don't understand that they benefited from the Trump Tax Act, the big, beautiful bill, I'm sure to go ahead and point it out. And I've always done that whenever we've had any provisions before in the past. And when we had the first Trump tax plan that went into play, I think 2018 is what it was, I did a lot of explaining also to folks as well to let them know kind of like what they lost. So yeah, overall, it's been a really busy tax season. I still got a ton of people left to take care of. And Marilyn, at some point, she left and went out of town. She went to Europe, and I typically will tag along with her. But this year, I stayed home. I stayed my black-owned business at home because I didn't want to lose a day in the front and a day in the back with travel. I just got so much stuff to try to do. So your boy has been here hustling, trying to make it happen, and trying to make sure all these clients get serviced. And most importantly, folks understand if they got a refund back that's large, why they got it. And if they got a tax bill, explain to them, what they did and what happened and things that they can do in the future to make changes if they opt to. So that's part of the full service that I offer, along with being able to allow my clients to call me at any point during the year to be able to talk about their returns. So all good, yeah. So that's this tax season. Got a few more days left, and brother's gonna make it happen. And looking forward to the rest of this year as we continue to go at this. And then, so let's go ahead and talk about the government shutdown. Man, I think we're getting close to 40 days, I think, so on this round. And we had a previous government shutdown. Well, this is more of a partial shutdown. I think before in the past we had more of a complete shutdown. And I think during the last, funding round. So if you guys aren't sure what happens, the government needs to have a budget in order to move forward. And most companies, when they do a budget, usually somewhere, when I've done it before in the past, I work for companies, usually around July, we start the budget cycle, start sending out paperwork, letting people know what the parameters are. And then usually September is when we all first sit down and decide on what we're gonna do and what gets funded and what doesn't. There's a lot of back and forth. And so by the time usually November comes, the first holiday season, pretty much everything is lined up and all the departments know going into next year, kind of where they sit. So the government doesn't necessarily operate as efficiently. So there's a point where they will work, and then if they don't have a budget in place for stuff and it's approved, those agencies will shut down. So the government has plenty of money to keep things going, but if they don't have the budget structure on how things can be spent, what ends up happening is those departments and the government shuts down. So until they agree on a budget, the back and forth, a lot of times there's some contentious things that may happen, but until they agree on a budget, they can't move forward. And so they might decide, okay, well, instead of having a whole year budget, we'll agree on a budget for like the next month or next 2 weeks or whatever it might be. Then they continue to operate. So in the meantime, they're in the process of talking and discussing and negotiating and trying to figure out how the budget will actually work. And so during the last budget cycle, they all agreed to fund the rest of the majority of the government through the end of the cycle. I think it's September is what it is, or August 31st is what it is. So yeah, it's one of those, end of September, end of August. So they've agreed to fund the majority of the government, and everybody's got their marching orders, and the money is going to go where it needs to go. So the thing is, they did not agree on funding one critical department, which is the Department of Homeland Security. And so a number of different agencies fall under that particular umbrella. So you're going to find the Coast Guard is under there. You're also going to find, I think it's the Cybersecurity Division is under there. You also have ICE is under there as well. And did I say the Coast Guard? I think the Coast Guard is also under there. So there might be some other minor departments, but that's kind of where everything stands. And so what they ended up doing was they ended up funding it just for a short period of time, and knowing very well that the provisions that the blue team had set up, they weren't going to be met, and then the government was shut down. So when the government shuts down, if you're considered to be an essential worker, in certain tasks, and actually, did I say the TSA is under there also as well? Yeah, so the TSA is, of course, under there, under the Department of Homeland Security. And so if you're an essential worker, like the TSA is, when the government shuts down, you don't get furloughed or sent home. You ended up having to still work, and then once everybody figures stuff out, you'll get a big paycheck to compensate you for the time that you didn't get paid. And so no other employer in the United States can operate like that, but the federal government, of course, has its own rules that it goes by. So that's kind of where we are there for, how we got here. And so what ended up happening was, in the negotiations when they broke down, the blue team was pretty adamant about, not funding the bill and the department until there were some major changes that took place with the Department of Homeland Security, specifically with ICE. So all good. So that's where they kind of drew the line in the sand, and then it was time to face off. So fast forward to where we are right now, we're about 35 to 40 days from when all this initially happened. And are we close to a deal? I would like to think that we're closer than we were before, but things are still pretty contentious. And so I was, so during these negotiations and stuff, I've been kind of watching them here and there. Trump had announced that, and this is kind of what my prediction is. If we don't end up funding the Department of Homeland Security, where we're going to really see issues and problems is specifically at the airport with the TSA department. So already now at this point, their funds dried up, and a number of folks have, quit, because of course you got to make ends meet, and a number of folks are calling out, maybe so they can work temporarily and then try to come back and all that. So it's been kind of a crazy situation for our friends there, the TSA agents, and so, You know, and so what's been happening as a result, we've been seeing it on the news. They've been encouraging people to get to the airport 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 or 6 hours in advance in order to be able to get on a plane. And so what's happening is the number of available workers each day is dwindling, but people still, and then we're getting into a peak travel season. We're coming up into spring break right now, and then after that, we're gonna have summer travel. And so something in here has got to go to head, you know, so all to be expected. You know, this is what, if you just look at things kind of in a critical nature, this is what you kind of expect right now at this point. So all good. Yeah, we get that. And so now we're at the point where the agents haven't been getting paid. And I think at some point, you got to always remember with Trump, he's always playing 4D chess. And so he had a couple things happen. Elon, everybody's always critical of him. He stepped in and said, hey, it's not fair for the TSA agents not to get paid. And I think he's somewhere around $900 billion in wealth. I think 893 billion when I looked it up on Gemini. So he's getting close to being a trillionaire. And he said, you know what, it's not fair for these guys to not get paid. I'll step in and stopgap until they end up, you know, getting back to work. And I kind of looked at some provisions. I don't know if that's something legal that can happen, and I'm quite sure the smart people will figure it out. But under the circumstances now, you know, the only people that can pay federal employees is the government. So I don't know if they're allowed to take money and get that to happen. So all good. You know, so we'll see where that all plays. So he's gotten a lot of great press and, you know, a lot of attaboys, and a lot of people in TSA are hoping. So we'll see if that actually plays out or not. So definitely a good gesture for folks to try to get, you know, paid and keep the money coming in. And then the other thing that happened is Trump said, hey, you know what? I'm gonna send ICE down to the airports to help out. And of course, everybody's kind of mad about that. But Holman, he's like, hey, you know, there's a lot of stuff that we can do there. You know, we're not trained to scan bags and all that kind of stuff, but we can do a lot of other operations that would allow them to focus on being at the gate so that they can deal with more folks and get them through the line. That's what it's all about. You know, so all good. And so when I heard that, I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy. You got two broke people hanging out together, having a party. So if under DHS, Department of Homeland Security, ICE is there and TSA is there, if neither one is getting paid, you know, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I went and Googled, I said, is ICE getting paid right now? And they said, yes, absolutely. That's what Gemini said. They said back in last year, I think it was in July of 2025, they passed a bill into law that funded ICE with $75 billion. So, and I was like, wow, $75 billion. So they've got enough to continue operating for a long time. And I did the math. The average person right now that's in Department of Homeland Security gets paid $51,000 a year. I think that's what they said, 51 or 61. When you multiply it out every 2 weeks, the payroll is roughly $240 billion. I think $220 billion, $1 million is what it is. And so only a portion of that belongs to ICE, let's just say half. You know, so, and if you take the amount of money they're supposed to get, and that's already been allocated to them, and you turn around and you look at what their payroll is, they've got enough funding to operate for a long time. So I was trying to figure out, like, what was the logic behind this whole thing happening? And I was wondering if, you know, the Dems on the blue team, if they were aware that when they went into the standoff, that ICE right now is getting paid. And so Gemini spit back, yeah, they are. It kind of creates an unusual circumstance because the situation that they're trying to rally and make changes against, it has funding. So, but who knows where this is all going to end up. And hopefully it gets resolved soon. And there's a lot of pressure that's starting to happen right now in the media because of this. And I've been seeing, and if you ask Gemini and say, who do Americans blame for the partial shutdown? Pretty much it's across party lines. You know, the Republicans, you know, the red team blames the blue team and blue team blames the red team. All good, you know, it's what you would expect. And then I asked specifically, who does the TSA agents blame? And then they blame the red team unanimously on that there. You know, so hopefully in the end, they're able to work this out. And without the stopgap of ICE coming in here, I predicted that probably about the 2-month mark, that airports would start shutting down, because there was one thing before when the FAA wasn't funded, you know, in the previous shutdown, if something happened in the sky that was cataclysmic, you know, that would affect, and I did a video about that a while back, that would definitely affect the negotiations and bringing people to the table to get a resolution really quick. But there's not really any type of, you know, cataclysmic thing that can happen unless security failed and somebody was able to smuggle something onto a plane, you know, God forbid, and there was some incident that took place that could have been stopped if things were a little bit more, you know, if things were a little bit more fluid with the funding and everybody was doing what they're supposed to do. So my hope is that they figure it out sooner than later, and I hope that the employees right now that are suffering and not getting paid through all the agencies, even the Coast Guard, you know, and they're part of keeping us safe also as well, that folks are able to figure this out and we can get it resolved, hopefully permanently, and not have to deal with the politics and the political theater that relates to, you know, this topic. So yeah, that's where we kind of sit for that. So I kind of hope that we are done soon and soon enough. So that's it for that topic. So like I said, you know, let's just keep our fingers and toes crossed and hope for the best. And you know, my heart goes out to everybody that's negatively affected by this individual event. And I think that the only thing that you can do, and like I said, there's usually something we can learn from this. So we all have to realize that when we get up, go to work every day, that we're not safe. And so we need to make sure that we have money set aside for a rainy day in case one of us loses our job. We can survive for a little while. We also have to have, and if only one person, if both people in a household, husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, if they all work, they should try to make sure that they can live off of at most 1.5 times of the income coming in. So, you know, if you can live on one salary, that's even better. And if there's only one person that works and the other person stay at home because they're raising kids or there's other issues, you know, that you have some type of a side hustle, you know, that you're able to make income from, that you've been doing consistently. And it can almost really be anything that you can sell online or, you know, be a part of. And if you can keep money coming in, you know, and try not to use that money and tuck it aside and set it away, then in the end, you'll be a much, much better person when it comes to, you know, these type of situations. So that's what the lesson is. Like I said, remember, always brace for impact, and just remember, nobody's coming to save any of us. So let's jump right into Nick Shirley. Man, Nick Shirley is a, what do they call him now? A citizen journalist. You know, so, and I did a whole breakdown about him in a previous video. So if you search for Nick Shirley in my content, you'll be able to see kind of what I talked about, like the background about him. And so here he is again. He's back up to his old tricks. So and I think everybody's aware, he went up to Minnesota and brought to the surface a ton of fraud that was taking place up there. And as a result, you know, Waltz stepped down from running for governor, and he's also had to go and testify under some very critical, you know, questioning in Congress, and it didn't necessarily look good for him. So, you know, all good, we get it, it's all part of the process. And so I think at the time, you know, they were estimating that the fraud in Minnesota was $9 billion initially, and I think it's expanded to a whole lot more. And some of the communities up there have been under extreme scrutiny, and it's been very, very tough. So I get all that, very true. And so, but one of the things that they've talked about is that this is kind of like the tip of the iceberg, that there's a ton of fraud everywhere throughout the US under certain types of affinity programs. And so he ended up going to California and essentially did the same thing that he did in Minnesota. He yoked up with one of the citizens there that have been monitoring this stuff and trying to bring light to it for many years and hasn't gotten any place. So he jumped in and immediately went out in the field, and with the majority of the fraud that he was uncovering was similar to what he had found in Minnesota as it dealt with childcare. And how you doing? There was a situation where he ended up going to a number of different places to try to check and see, you know, the kids that were there. There was no one there kid-wise and stuff like that. And there was one heartbreaking situation where there were a couple kids, I think there were 6, 7, or 8, and it was a location where they were supposed to have childcare, but there were no adults there. The kids opened the door and they're explaining that nobody was there. So, you know, something like that is definitely heartbreaking to see something like that happen. So, you know, and then he continued on in the next level, which was looking at fraud as it dealt with hospice care. And so he's down there in Southern California and a number of the different counties down there using publicly available information about these programs and companies because they're, you know, government funded. And then just kind of just doing a simple peekaboo where he showed up and, you know, was like, hey, you know, is there anybody here that can answer some questions? And of course, we already know the outcome, very similar to what happened in Minnesota, where there was nobody available to help. And then once word got out that he was there, folks start scattering. So they had people that were leaving in kitted up cars and Mercedes and BMWs. I think one guy even bailed out of one of the businesses. He jumped in a Maybach and he was gone, but he stopped and chopped it up with Nick for a little bit, and then he eventually rolled out of there. So this kind of falls under the watch of Newsom, and you know, it's the same type of similar situation. And so, you know, am I saying that any of this is true or accurate? I don't know. I'm not investigating this, and I'm quite sure at some point this will turn into, if they're not already doing it right now, it'll turn into a criminal investigation, and things will fall where they are supposed to fall. And you know, in the end, this may affect, because I think at this point right now, pretty much everybody's kind of waiting for Newsom to run for the blue team for the next presidential election. And so this may ultimately smear him bad enough where it's not going to make him a very, very viable candidate, you know. And I've also been looking and seeing reports, and you can even ask Gemini, you know, there's even on CNN, they're reporting that with the new gubernatorial primary that's coming up, because he's tapped out, it's almost like 1,000 people are running, you know. And the two candidates that are leading the race in there right now are both on the red team. And the way that their stuff works is that whoever are the top two, you know, those are the ones that end up on the ballot. And so there's a chance right now that California may accidentally end up having a governor that's on the red side. So we'll see how that all plays out. But back to Nick. So, you know, he's out here doing his thing and making a name for himself. And, you know, I only talk about, I'm not trying to say that I agree with him in any kind of way or I disagree with him in any kind of way. The lesson always is what we've talked about before in the past, is, you know, whatever it is that you want to do in this world, there's no reason to allow anything or gatekeepers to keep you from doing what you want to do or being what you want to be. And so since he's done his Minnesota expose, you know, he's been to the White House. He has been to, I'm just gonna walk my bike up here. He's been to the White House. He's testified in front of Congress. He's been on all types of news shows. And he's really made a name for himself, and he made a tough decision to give up his life at one point and head off and do his missionary work, and then come back and, you know, hit the ground where he's doing right now. And he's just building more and more of a following and a reputation. And so this is something that is possible for all of us, you know. And so, like I said, I'm not trying to say what he's doing is fair, correct, the right way to go about it. But whatever it is that you decide you want to do or be in this world, it's up to you to figure it out. And you can easily use technology to get to where you want to be and make it to the next level. And so I even talked about this and when we talked about the Super Bowl and the Turning Point USA halftime show. So this year coming up, I expect there to be a number of different people that will utilize low-cost technology to get their own Super Bowl or their own really big bowl game product out there. So it is what it is. So we'll see what else comes from him, and no, he is in no way stopping. And you know, the way I feel ultimately is, you know, it's unfair to the American people for anybody to break the law and have fraud, do fraud against money that belongs to the people. You know, so I think most people would agree with that. And so it's up to those that can and those that should to investigate and find out if these things are true. And if they aren't, all good. You know, and if they are, you know, so hopefully justice is served. So let's kind of leave it at that. Got nothing else really to say. So let's jump into the last topic here. And let's talk about Michael B. Jordan winning the Oscars. You know, so yeah, I'll tell you, I have been a fan of Michael B. Jordan probably when I first found out about him. I think a lot of you guys, if you're Wire fans, he was on The Wire. And he played I think he was like 15 at the time. This was like back in early 2000s, maybe 2002, 2003. He was on a number of episodes. And so he worked for the, I think the Barksdale crew, and he was one of the Yo Boys, and he was selling dope, but he was also trying to take care of his brothers and sisters. He was the oldest, get them off to school and make sure they had stuff to eat, you know, and he was a drug dealer that had a conscience. So, and through a number of different episodes, you know, he was introduced, he got more of a steady role, and then they made a decision at some point to kill off his character, and I think a lot of people were really, really sad about that. And if you guys are Wire fans, there's so many major actors that have passed through that show that have blown up and are extremely larger than life right now. You got Idris Elba, he played a really big role on there. You know, Michael B. Jordan is probably the biggest. And like I said, I've always been a fan of his, and most people that are a fan of him, they go way back. We just call him Wallace, and that was his name that was in the, you know, the Wire. So, and so here we are. He's teamed up with Michael Kugler through a number of different roles, and you know, a number of different movies and stuff that have been playing, and he's done an excellent job and outstanding work that he's done. So, and at one point they said that Marvel was on life support, and if it wasn't for Blade, which is like my favorite superhero franchise, Marvel would have been dead a long time ago. He's the one that revived that franchise. And so I've talked about it, you know, the movie industry now is not necessarily on life support, but they're trying to figure it out. And when Sinners came out, it became a cultural phenomenon and a movement, and it actually helped breathe life back into Hollywood. So, you know, people have been talking about Oscar play for quite a long time now. There was a lot of unique technology that they used and invented to be able to make this role work. Then there was tons and tons of, you know, breakdowns that related to how the movie was being filmed and the story behind it and all that as well. So so a lot of people have been saying Oscar, Oscar, Oscar for a long time. Fantastic. So he ended up winning and deserved every bit of it. So did I watch the Oscars? Nope, I sure didn't. Did I go back and watch the Oscars and see him accept his award? Nope, sure didn't. And then there was also the other incident that had taken place, you know, a couple weeks before that, where there was an expletive that was used at one of the award shows over in Europe, and they didn't bleep it out. And a number of folks that fall into various conspiracy theories said, hey, you know, in order for you to get an Oscar, if you're a certain persuasion, you have to kind of go through a humiliation ritual. And so they knew at that point that he was supposed to, you know, win. And so it is what it is. I don't offer any opinion one way or another when it comes to that. So like I said, I'm glad that he won the Oscar, and it was so nice to, I'll tell you, there's only a few brothers that I'm like, you know what, I want to be him. And so I really look up to Michael B. Jordan, and the brother is clean, the brother is sharp, and the way he lives his life, and the way he goes about things, and watching his career blossom over the years, you know, so I would definitely, you know, would want to be Michael B. And when I saw his outfit that he was wearing for the Oscars, I was like, damn, that is clean. And I'll tell you what, at one point in our black men's lives, Steve Harvey was like the standard. And he had a clothing line. Everybody was getting these Steve Harvey suits, and all that. And I'll tell you what, Michael B. Jordan, I looked it up. He does not have a clothing line. He's done a few collabs along the way with Coach on a few drops here and there and some other manufacturers. But if he came out with a clothing line, I would lose weight to be able to fit into his stuff so that way I can style and profile and look good out here on these streets. So I definitely was digging what he was wearing. And I'll tell you, homeboy is down to earth. He brought his mom and his dad to the Oscars, and then afterwards he went and celebrated. He went down to In-N-Out Burger of all places and ordered some food, and there was a big hoopla there, and the employees and the people that were there, they were so surprised. And he was taking pictures with folks and having a great time. So the brother is as humble as you can get and very appreciative and down to earth. So I definitely love that and respect that. We've never even really seen anything negative out here in these streets about him. And like I said, I always refer to him as Wallace. And so where does all the lesson in this come from? So like I said, mad respect for Michael B. So at one point, getting back to Steve Harvey, at one point he was dating Steve Harvey's daughter. So I think her name is Lori Harvey. And I'll tell you, they were a very clean couple. You can probably, some people might refer to them as a modern Michelle and Barack, somebody you can kind of look up to. And, so he was dating her. I think at some point she had dated Diddy, a few boyfriends before and all that. And, all good. We come and go in and out of relationships. It is what it is. We all have a past and a history. So they got together, and Michael B. Jordan, he was gigging on her. He really liked her a lot. You can tell. So I have people tell me all the time, it's like, man, you can tell you and your wife really like each other. They have that type of, at least he did, he had that type of love and spark for her. And so I think it was one of her longest relationships that she had, maybe like a year and a half, I think is what it was, all good. And so rumor has it, and like I said, I wasn't there to talk to them, but if you ask online, it'll tell you they pretty much came to an impasse. And I think what a lot of couples do. And so a lot of times you might be dating somebody, having a great time. You kind of do like a reality check and you're like, hey, where are we going with this? And if you have certain types of aspirations for maybe marriage or something deeper or engagement or whatever it might be, you guys really have to kind of be aligned on that. And so they had the serious talk and discussion, and Michael was like, I want to move forward and settle down and build a family and start a family. And Lori was kind of like, well, I'm still young and I'm not ready. And so, I'll just go ahead and keep my option open to keep my option open. If we can still date, I'm assuming it's all good, but I don't want to move forward. There's a lot of things that I want to do. I want to kind of focus on my career, all that. All good. No shame, no shade. We all have a right to decide where we need to be in our life and where we want to be. And sometimes when you get to a why road decision, which can take you one way or another, sometimes we make the right decision, sometimes we don't. And sometimes once we get down the road a little bit or down the tree branch, we can kind of monkey back and then jump back onto the branch, but Michael B. Jordan, he was definitely hurt pretty bad by the whole breakup. It was pretty obvious. And he buried himself in his work and perfected his craft and dug in. And he didn't do anything out here in these streets that would make you think otherwise about him. And this is typical for a lot of us fellas, you know, when stuff doesn't work out like we want it to, you know, a lot of times we go into deep introspect and we try to figure out where we went wrong and we try to keep it going. So I think shortly afterwards, within less than a year, she ended up dating, I think it's a British actor, and he's played in a number of different movies, but not at the same level of success as B. Jordan, but nonetheless, definitely in the industry. And they kind of had some rockiness back and forth, you know, all good. And I think at one point they broke up, split up. And if you check with Gemini, now they're still allegedly, like, secretly dating. They've been seeing different places after they've kind of broke up. And rumor has it that she might be having a baby, you know. And so, which is definitely a reason for some people to try to figure out if they can try to make it happen. You know, and if that's the case, I wish them both well, and I hope they're able to figure it out and make it happen, because I really think that kids should really try to have both parents there if it's possible. You know, sometimes it's not possible for whatever reason, but I hope that if that's the case, that it all turns out well. And so Michael B. Jordan, back to him, he's at the pinnacle of his career, and who knows what he's going to do from here and where he's going to go from here. You know, we can only imagine. You know, I can tell you, he is a major A-list celebrity, and he can definitely command a lot of money per picture and percentages of the box office, you know, all that. So he's definitely a meteoric and rare talent for sure. You know, so what happened? What is the lesson here? So rumor has it that when it was announced that he won, Lori Harvey reached out to him to try to congratulate him. And she reached out to him via phone call. He didn't accept the phone calls. And she also tried to text him and congratulate him. And he didn't respond back, you know, so. And I know that's got to be kind of heartbreaking for her. You know, I know I would be, because, you know, since she's left Michael B. Jordan, his career has gone no place but up. And he's a public figure, so you can pretty much keep an eye on what he's doing and what he's up to. It's all there for anybody to see, you know. And so when you end up dating somebody that is very public and it falls apart, it's very difficult for you to kind of walk away and not try to, you know, maintain some type of visibility to what they're up to. So if you imagine that you had a girlfriend or boyfriend in the past, and, you know, they have no social media, and if things ended with them, you really have no idea what happened to them or what they're up to, you know. And so that's the thing with her, is that he is so visible that she can really almost monitor every move that he makes. And so I think there's got to be some regret there on her side, and I don't think there's anything on his side, because I'll tell you, if I was in a situation before with somebody and it didn't work out and they had some real great success, I don't think I would do anything at all to try to reach out to them and congratulate them, unless it's kind of like one of those, hey, big head checks, you know. And so like I said, the lesson here is not so much this is not anything that any of us have never gone through before in the past, but, and I kind of talked about this in the video I did before this, one or two, where I talked about I'm the best of what is left. And so I think all of us can quarterback from the sidelines and agree at this point that Michael B. Jordan is a great guy. And maybe after, you know, you're in a relationship with him, and especially if he wants to settle down with you and you make a decision not to, and you kind of go on and try to test the waters out in the streets, and that kind of stuff doesn't work out, at some point you're going to realize, and I think we all have gone through this, we will realize that And it doesn't necessarily have to be a relationship. You can have made a bad decision about anything, about, you know, you had 2 cars to buy. One was really reliable and one was really flashy. You chose the flashy one and it's cost you a lot of money. You can kind of look back on it, you know, so I say it's probably fair to assume that she probably at this point is having some regrets about what's happened and her not securing the prize. He was right there with her. This could have been her with him and in a magic moment. In the meantime, she has to kind of just deal with her current situation. Not that there's anything wrong with it at all. But so like I said, the lesson here is to realize that sometimes when you least expect it, something really good will come along. And if you don't take advantage of it, you don't respect it, you don't appreciate it, one day you will lose it and you can lose it forever. And so, you know, and sometimes you may, in your mind, want to do something one day, but sometimes a blessing might show up early. And so I know even with my relationship with Marilyn, I was ready to head out the country and relocate, but then I ran into her and I had to really rethink what my trajectory was and where I wanted to be, because what I ultimately wanted in my life, I found, but I didn't expect to find it at that time. And so I had to ask around amongst my friends and my boys and kind of talk it out. And they all said, hey, you know, I think you know what you need to do. Go ahead and do it. And so here we are today. So that's all I want to say, guys, is, you know, be mindful of the things that happen around you. And life does not need to be full of regrets. And so am I in any way poo-pooing on Lori? Nope. And, you know, she missed out on Michael B. Jordan. Cool, that doesn't necessarily mean that was her man. We're just using this as a general example. But hopefully, if this was the case, you know, she will realize that when she runs into the proximity of somebody else in the future, that she will be able to easily, you know, capitalize on a situation and realize that her blessing has arrived. So that's it, guys. I'm out of time, and enjoyed talking to you guys here. I'm gonna go ahead and peace out, and we'll see you soon. Peace. In my life. Oh, shit. Okay, my brother fell. This is black ice. Okay. All right, I'm okay. All systems check. All right, I'm good. So let me just penguin it.